Hello guys, welcome to Online Web Tutor presented by Profotech Solutions team. I am Sanjay. We are learning CodeIgniter Framework Beginners tutorial. This is our part number 36. Inside this video session guys, we will discuss about Captcha validation in our CodeIgniter application. And also guys, if you are a beginner to the channel, then please don't forget to subscribe. Keep watching our previous video sessions to get the clear concept about CodeIgniter Framework tutorial. In our previous video sessions guys, we had discussed about Captcha helper as well as we had seen about form helper. Now inside this video, we are going to make a simple form. Inside that form we will integrate a Captcha, and by submitting that form to the server, we will validate that our Captcha input value is correct or not. So back to editor. Now inside this routes.php, firstly we are going to create a route. So let's say route. Let's say that simple my Captcha. Now this will basically calls, let's say that learn helpers, the same controller we are going to use, and let's say that my Captcha form. Okay, now just put semicolon here, copy this method name. Now firstly we need to open this learn helpers controller. So back to our controllers folder, and this is our controller. All these things guys, all this stuff we have created in our previous video. So if you are new, just go through our previous video sessions to get clear concept about these files and methods. Now inside this controller file, I'm going to create a function, and this is basically a method. Let's say that my underscore Captcha underscore form. This will basically a call. Let's say that this load and view. Inside this function, I'm going to call a view file. Let's say that my underscore, let's say Captcha form. This is a view file name. So back to our views folder, and I'm going to create a file and something. This is the file.php. Now inside this file, I'm going to create a form tag. Inside this form tag, we want some input field elements like a text box where we are going to enter our Captcha value. Also, apart from the taking Captcha value, I want to add one more field to take the name value also. So let's say that this is a p tag, and inside this p tag I'm going to add firstly the label tag. Let's say label, and inside this label let's say that we have to enter our name, and here let's say input type, and it should be let's say text, and the name attribute something, let's say that txt underscore name. Inside second paragraph tag, I'm going to make another text box to take the Captcha value. So let's say label. Inside this label, let's say that enter Captcha code. Now if I copy this text box, pasting it here, and now this is all about txt, let's say code. Now what basically we are going to enter inside this box? Firstly, we are going to show a Captcha here. Okay, we have to enter that Captcha value inside this text box. While submitting this form to the server, we are going to validate that the inputted Captcha code is correct or not. So we will add the Captcha image here right in bit second. So firstly let's make a button type submit here. So let's say button, and inside this button let's say that submit form, and it should be capital S and let's say capital F, submit form, and it also a named attribute. Let's say that btn underscore submit. Now inside this form tag, I'm going to pass some attribute, and the first attribute something called action, and this is all about we have to pass the URL where we are going to submit this form. So inside this I'm going to pass this site URL, and inside this URL firstly just back to our routes.php, and let's say that route, let's say my Captcha and submit. And if I copy these things, pasting it here, same controller we are going to call, and let's say my Captcha form, let's say submit. So basically we need to call this route name. So copy that, back to view file, and I'm going to put inside this site URL. So this is the first parameter that we have set as the action attribute. Now in the next attribute I'm going to add something called method type, and it should be something called post. Now next, while setting these forms, if I save all these files first, go here, copy this route name, back to browser, and if I open that file, so index.php, and pasting it here. So this is the form that we have developed. If I inspect that, now here is the form tag, and inside that form this is the action that we have made, and all about this is our name field, this is our captcha code, and now this is our button. Next I am going to show our captcha image right here. So back to editor, if I back to our controller, now inside this controller, as you have remembered that in our previous video we had discussed about that how can we integrate about captcha helper in our CodeIgniter application. So inside that video we had discussed that while using any captcha, firstly we need to load our helper, something called captcha helper. After loading captcha helper, this is the method that we are going to use, something called create captcha. By using this function, it basically creates several attributes. Now one of the attribute is called image. So by getting this image, we can just show this image to our front end. But before showing this image, these are the configurations basically we have to pass inside this create captcha function. So what basically we are going to do, we are going to copy this all the things back to our method. Now this is the method. Now inside that method I'm going to pass all these parameters. Firstly, we have loaded our captcha helper, we have made our configurations. So let's summarize one more time about the configuration. This is all about image path. It means that we are going to generate our captcha images and save all those images inside this folder, where basically we have made this folder. If we back to folder structure, this is the folder that we have made. It means that if we generate any captcha images, it will save inside this folder. Thus we have made something called image path, and this is the path. Next is something called image URL. By putting this image URL, we can access all the captcha images from this captcha_images folder. Next parameter is something called font path. Basically the captcha images generated, it uses something called this is our font family. Now image width, image height, word length, and font size, these are the basic configurations we have to make to generate our captcha images. After writing these configurations, we have to pass the configurations inside a function, and this is the function basically defined in our captcha helper. Now by putting all these configurations, so let's say word length, I'm just putting something, let's say 6, or let's say 8 characters. Now instead of font size 22, let's say 18. Now all the settings are good. Now firstly we are going to use this function. We have generated our captcha images as well as several attributes by using this function. Now we have retrieved about the captcha images right here, and we have stored inside this data variable. Now I'm going to pass a data variable in the second parameter inside this view method. So back to our view file, copy this key, and inside this view file basically that key would be appeared as a variable name. So let's say paragraph tag, let's say echo, and this is our captcha image. So if I save this file, back to browser, close this, inspect, reload this page, now as we can see that this is our captcha. Now firstly we need to increase about image width and the image height of the captcha configurations. So back to controller, and let's say that it should be something 122 in height, and let's say 80 in height. Okay, this is width and this is height. Save this file, reload this page, and I think that also we need to provide something, let's say image width 180, and it should be something, let's say 90. So save here, reload this page. Now all the things are good. So we have done our form. Right here we have name, enter captcha code. Inside this text box we have to enter the code what basically we are saying inside this image. So if I inspect this image, Now this is the image, and this is all about image URL. Basically we have generated this image, and this image saved inside this Captcha_images folder right here, as we can see. Now what basically do inside this video, what basically the concept we are using. While generating this Captcha image, we are going to store the value of this image inside a session. By putting this code inside this area while submitting this form, we are going to compare our session value with this enter text box value. If those two values are same, it means that the Captcha code is validated, or it has some another numbers, means Captcha mismatched. So back to editor. Now right here I'm going to store the Captcha number what we have seen inside this image. We are going to store that number inside a session. So how can we store the word we are seeing inside this image? To use inside the session, firstly we have to load the library, something called session. So right here I'm going to use something called this. Let's load library, and we are going to use something called session. So scroll to the method, and let's say that this session, it has a method something called set underscore user data, and here I'm going to put as code, and let's say that Captcha, what basically the variable, and inside this variable we have generated and store all the attributes of this Captcha inside this. Now it has a property something called word, which basically stores all the characters which basically we have generated inside that image. Now we have successfully stored the word inside this code variable. Now finally we are going to submit our form. So by submitting, we are hitting this URL. Now we have to make this method, so copy the method name back to our controller, and let's say that function, this is method name, and inside this method, if I write let's say print r, inside this print r, let's say this input, and let's say post. So if I save this file, back here, reload this page. Now if I input the value something called online web tutor, and let's say code something called capital Q, capital P, Q, 2, C, capital C, small c, 3, and F. If I submit this form, all the parameters right now we are getting inside this txt underscore name and txt underscore code. Now what basically we are going to do, we are going to compare this txt code with our session stored value. If those two values are matched, it means that Captcha validated, otherwise Captcha mismatched. So back to editor. Now inside this form, I'm going to take the variable something called let's say Captcha, or simply let's say form code. Inside this input post, and the value we are getting inside this named attribute something called txt underscore code. Now let's say that if form code is equal to, and if we get about this, let's say load or something this session, let's say get user data, or instead of that let's say user data. Inside this, if we want to retrieve this value, then we have to use simply code here. By putting this, we can actually take the value what we have saved right here. So let's say saved value. Now if we compare the form code with the saved value, let's say saved value. Now if these two values are equal, it means that Captcha, let's say validated, else let's say echo Captcha, let's say mismatched. So if I save this file, back here, reload this page. Again if I reload this page, as we can see that random images are generated. Okay, now let's say that online web tutor, we are going to enter some of the code what actually we are seeing inside this image. So let's say that C, B, 4, 3, capital E, D, 6, and finally I think that this is 1. If I press submit form, Captcha mismatched. It means that we have entered a wrong value. So if I back again here, let's say that instead of this value, let's say Q, B, 4, 8, capital B, small f, capital H and small w. If I press submit, Captcha validated. It means we have submitted our Captcha code successfully. The right word what actually inside that image. So this was the simple concept, guys. By using this Captcha, actually if suppose you have made an application, inside that application a login form is there, so just you need to integrate about this Captcha. You need to store the value before enter inside any session, and you need to compare that session value with the submitted code. If it equals, it means that the entered Captcha code is correct, otherwise it is not valid. So this is simple concept of input Captcha validation in our application. So inside this video, guys, if you have any doubt, then please drop your comment. I will give my reply as soon as possible. So for this video session, guys, thank you for watching. Have a great day.